Welcome to this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind. I'm Larry Weidel, and before we get started, if you want to know exactly how to win again and again, go to weidelonwinning.com/webinar now to watch something I've put together for you. Now let's get going into this episode of Million Dollar Mastermind. This afternoon, I'm here with Sankarshan Murthy, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Bumblebee Spaces. You see the future of living and furniture at bumblebeespaces.com. And when you see it, you will probably want it. And, there's an excitement there that with these products that really solve so many problems. So, Sankarshan, talk about that, what you were mentioning earlier. How do you avoid the getting stuck in the paralysis by analysis?
Yeah, there's a there's an interesting quote that I heard on. There's this rule called, actually one of our Wharton professors was talking about this, called the 40-70 rule. It's not supposed to total to 100. So you have to make decisions when you have what you believe is like 40% of the information. And if you waited until you have 70% of the information, you waited too long to make decisions. And this whole 40 and 70 is kind of arbitrary in some ways, because you don't know what is exactly 100% of all the decision making variables that you may have. But it gives you a sense of sometimes making, even if it's an incorrect decision, and being kind of like, okay, this is why, like based on the information at hand, this is why I'm making this decision. And kind of like knowing that you may have to revisit it. That's a better way to move forward. And sometimes if it, the amount of time you do false starts or like readjust and things like, or throw away a few parts, or those things are you're still way ahead of the game than not making a decision. Because if you keep waiting for perfect information, it's too late. One, like the moment passes. Second, your intensity on like your whole this your mind has like certain amount of energy to deal with decision making, right? And then it fatigues. If you're just sitting with it for too long, it fatigues, and you don't want to just tire your mind repeating the same thing. Instead, make a decision, then you have new information, make new decisions. You just like keep moving with that. And that's been kind of it's tough like at the time, because it's very uncomfortable that you're making some major decisions without perfect information. But then if you have perfect information, it's kind of too late. Like any rational person can make decision on perfect information.
Well, it's also not just perfect information, it's the perfect people to execute it, and the perfect amount of money to fund it, and the perfect facility. There's a lot of things that go, and it's like, is this the perfect time to be bringing these things? Talk about those things and how you get past it. Don't get stuck with the funding, with the people, with the timing, with because you're always going to know, the thing about being an entrepreneur, being a leader in any situation, you just got to accept the fact that every decision you make, there's going to be someone respectable who will say, well, that's a big mistake. That's wrong.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea that how do you work your way through that when you got limitations on personnel, money, but this is something we've got to do. We've got to get going on this. And then you have people out there, respectable people, knowledgeable people say, this is wrong. This is a mistake. And how do you get that courage of conviction and How do you deal with that mentally?
Totally. I think sometimes being a contrarian is energizing. Sometimes like, oh, they don't believe in it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like
Right.
being this underdog, it's energizing. But, it's also like, if it's constantly, if you're butting up against that, it is fatigue, like to your mind, right? Like, so I do tend to surround myself with people who are like net positive outlook on life. They are they may be very pragmatist, like like very much like things that could go wrong, like they're good at pointing that out, uh, but they are not just naysayers for the sake of being naysayers, right? Like, and that is that drives energy down, like this, where like every decision you make, like people are like second guessing in some ways. Like, like anybody who's done anything important, there have been people who laugh at it, who think it's crazy. Like there's always that. And if you really want to do something important, you, like you can't care about what will internet troll number whatever is going to say about this, right? Like that's not that's not going to help. But I think there are some people whose advice I take seriously. And like, for example, my wife is like sanity test for me. Like I kind of like, whenever I have crazy ideas, I kind of, first thing I do is kind of run it through her, and just to see like how she reacts. And uh, there's like net, uh her outlook on the world is net positive, like just like me. Like she's not a she doesn't believe like everything's bad, but she may pick at things that are like, are you sure this will work? Or like, like there are moments like that, which actually is very useful for me. And so is my co-founders. Like my co-founder is a very pragmatic person. And like so you do need a very strong, like you need to surround yourself with people who are optimists, uh, but they're very pragmatic. They are not they're problem solvers. But they're able to like identify the problem and articulate it. Because of course in hindsight, it's easy to like pick at, well, you made this decision wrong that day. Like
Right.
that doesn't help anything. Like,
Right.
unless you came to this meeting with a time machine, let's not even talk about what I did wrong some other day.
Hey, listen, there's a lot of information online, but there aren't a lot of people who've actually done something. In my case, I've actually built a successful business that's accrued over $5 billion in assets under management and has done well even during trying times. Now, if you want to know exactly how I've done this, go to whitelmwinning.com/webinar now. I've compressed a decade of learning into 5 short weeks just for those of you who want to give yourself an incredible advantage and are tired of waiting and watching others move up. Right. Yeah. Well, the thing is that uh, that's why it's true that most revolutions uh, are run with just a handful of people at the core, because you've got to have a small core of people who, there's so many things at the top when you make these decisions, that so many details, it's impossible to have a ton of people informed on all of these details.
Right.
And when you have, co-founder, you've got your spouse, you've got some insiders. That's why revolutions, even countries are run with just a handful of really key insider people, because you have to have a way of sorting through this thing. And like you say, get that idea in motion, uh, and still have thought it through enough to where any obvious uh, blunders or things that are going to come up and kill the deal are thought about or
Totally.
addressed. but you got to move fast. And because at the top, speed is really what gives you a
Yeah.
big advantage in any kind of competitive environment,
Totally.
sports, business, whatever.
Yeah.
Your fundamentals, you got to have your fundamentals, but if you can't execute on your fundamentals and your ideas and your improvements and your strategy quickly,
Right.
you're going to get beat by the one who can. And it is a race, it is a competition. And how do you, I'll tell you this. I had, when I was at my launch, the early years, and I was having to make so many decisions myself, I had those few times where I didn't have a key insider around me, because a lot of times the insiders will come up and then you expand and then they take off and take over the new expansion operation. And then now you're left with, you're left running things. You have a staff, but you don't have that key
Right.
person to lean on, the co-founder type person. And
Totally.
so I had a thing where when I was in those situations and I really didn't know to go left or right, I had one mentor that I had two mentors,
Mhm.
and one was a positive, go for it guy, and the other one was, yeah, I hate to say negative, but it was always slower,
Right.
think, the more methodical. But I would run the idea, I'd run the situation, and by each of them separately. I wouldn't tell them what I was thinking,
Right.
but I would say, what would you do?
Right.
And if I invariably, the positive guy reinforced what I was already thinking.
Mhm.
And the negative guy, I knew that if I got a yes vote out of the positive guy, now they didn't know how they were voting with their
Right.
response.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I got a yes vote from the positive guy and combined with a negative vote from the negative guy, I know I convinced this is the right move,
Right. Right. Yeah.
But how do
Yeah.
you come down to, when it comes down to that, it helps to have some things you can say, okay, this is how I'm going to decide and go.
Yeah. I think sometimes articulating that, like sometimes we go through decision making without even thinking of it like a decision. Like it's just like it just happens, right? And
Impulse, yeah.
yeah, if you're able to articulate and like lay out why you're thinking certain way, uh, like it one like to me, I've seen that it helps me just like think through. Like sometimes I like it doesn't matter like who I'm talking to. I just want to like like in Dr. House, he's always like talking to Wilson, and Wilson's not even engaging, and he's just like
Right.
talking to him, and he just walks out with an idea. And I know exactly how that feels, because sometimes I'm like just like throwing this and talking this through, and it like helps me unwrap some just like articulate what I should be focused on, or like like if there's some blind spots there.
Well, you're making a great point, and that is saying it out loud allows you to
Yeah.
hear your idea that may have seemed fantastic in your head, but then when you even hear yourself say it out loud to explain it to someone else, a lot of times even you don't even like it. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, when you say it out loud, you're like, what was I thinking? Yeah, you're right.
Right. That doesn't even sound good to me, and it's my idea. It's like a lot of times we'll review blogs, and my staff, they'll put it together, and I'll say, this is terrible, what a stupid idea this is. And and they said, well, that's what you said. I said, yeah, but I don't even like it anymore. I said, in the moment it made sense, but right now looking at it in writing, it's stupid. We got to change that. So really, really good. If you enjoyed what you've heard and are dead serious about finding out for yourself exactly how this works in the real world, I've taken the most valuable business lessons I've learned over 40 years and put them into something for you to watch. Go to whiteelemwinning.com/webinar now in order to move up as fast as possible. I'm Larry Weidel, and I run the $1 Million Mastermind. Go, go, go.